I'm going to show you how to load a Krasnogorsk 3. There are a lot of camera for not very much money. Their only problem is people have issues loading them. So I'm going to show you how to do it such that it always works. You'll notice this particular camera has had the loop formers removed. Your camera may or may not have had them removed. Very easy to remove them, and there are YouTube tutorials on how to remove them. I prefer them gone, but the trick I'm going to show you works with either them being there or not there. Alright, so we're going to wind the spring. I've also set the frame rate to a low speed. I think something like 12 frames per second is a good figure. Alright, so there's a pressure plate here, and there's two clamps, one clamp here and one clamp here. Now the funny thing about the clamps is that when they're fully open, they tend to squeeze the point at which you want the film to come out of the clamp. They tend to squeeze here. When they're open, when they're closed, I mean, there's a gap here. But when they're open, stupidly, that gap gets closed. So in order to thread it manually, you sort of need to halfway open them. Alright, so they're halfway open, so it's not fully closed together and it's not fully clamped down either. You need to just have it a bit open. Alright, so put your film on the top spindle in the usual way. Alright, give yourself a little bit of string and slide the film around the top of the main sprocket wheel here. Now, getting it in is fine like that, but you have to make sure it's actually flush, that the top of the film, this edge of the film, is flush with the sprocket wheel itself. Then you clamp. Now, the trick, all 3 points that I'm going to show you, they're the trick. The trick is to make sure the film is, the sprocket, the perforation, is stuck on a tooth. So there's teeth on the sprocket wheel, and there's teeth on there's the gate, or the claw in the gate, and there's another sprocket wheel, or the other side of the sprocket wheel here. And in all 3 instances, the trick is to make sure before you move on that you've secured the film to each of the 3 points, there, and here. So I'll do it again. Okay, so the film is just in there, and you can see that when it's not secured in, it will slide backwards and forwards, no problem. What you want to do is push it down until it meets the teeth, and then clamp it so that it's secure. Okay, done. Next is to slide the film behind the pressure plate. Now, once again, there's a claw, and you want the claw to meet the perforations. So in the same way, you want the perforation, the claw, to go through one of the perforations. Now, I can see that I've done that because the film is, tending not to want to move. Unless I slacken that, I can pull it through, but in the absence of doing that, I'll just go back to where I was. See, going back's a little bit tricky. Alright, to go back, I will remove the sprocket, the pressure plate. I'll slide that back in. Now, so you can see that right now I'm not on the claw. It's moving backwards and forwards. So I need to manhandle it until it clicks on the claw. Now you can see that the film won't budge. Well, it will if I pull really hard, but by and large it won't. Okay, and then I do the third one. Now once again, you've got to have this mostly, or about half open and half closed. Right, to get the film into that gap. Shut the tooth and then make sure it's on the perforation of the sprocket wheel. So I've checked all 3 points. Having done that, it's going to work no problem. Let's see what happens if it's off in one of these spots. Let's take it off the top, under the top clamp, right? So it sort of looks right, but it may not be right. Oh, it was right. Okay, let's try and be more inaccurate. See what happens? Disaster. And that's a classic Krasnogorsk disaster. And the only reason it happened is because I didn't have it on the top sprocket. I didn't have it clamped properly at the top. There's only one sprocket wheel in a Krasnogorsk, whereas other cameras have two, so I'm used to thinking of them in plural terms. So I'll just give myself a bit more space there, checking that, checking this, checking that. Okay, now they're correct again. Now let's loosen this one and see what happens. Okay, so that's clearly not on it. And you can see it's going to be a disaster. So I'll fix that. The harder one to demonstrate might well be the claw. So that's back on there. I can see it's back on there because it won't come out. Now let's try and get it off the claw. I'll pull the pressure plate out so I can get it completely wrong. Definitely wrong. Put the pressure plate back. Still definitely wrong. Let's see what happens. So the bottom, in this instance, the bottom loop disappeared completely, which is what you'd expect. So you need to have it on the claw. Now that's just a little bit too bottom heavy there. So it's loose currently. I'll put this back. Now we'll get it on the, yeah, now it's on the claw, and that's going to be perfectly fine. And that's all you have to do. That's the trick. Checking those 3 points. If those 3 points are correct, you're going to have a perfectly fine roll. Missing one of those, and it's going to be a disaster. Good.